Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, and I'm going to start this episode of Mingles with Jingles off with a complaint. Can you remember, it was around about this time last year, and it was just after Fallout 76 had been released, well, it was like, well, okay, so Fallout 76 is a steaming pile of dog shit, but hey, what other great new PC games do we have to look forward to in the run-up to Christmas? And there was nothing. I was just, what the hell's going on? Where are all the great PC titles for Christmas? Seriously, there was absolutely bugger all. So I thought, well, maybe things have been delayed. I mean, it's not like the major publishers to not push something out in time for Christmas just because it wasn't ready. But hey, maybe some titles have slipped. And sure enough, there was a major AAA title coming out. Oh, end of January, beginning of February. The only problem is that major AAA title was Anthem, and we all know how that one turned out. And since then, it's been a really dry year on PC. I mean, I'm not saying there haven't been any good games released on PC throughout the entire course of 2019. I'm sure there must have been. Just sitting here in front of the computer right now, I'm really struggling to remember any of them. I mean, I've played some games that amused and entertained me. Dawn of Man kept me busy for a couple of dozen hours. Deliver Us the Moon's been fun, but I wouldn't describe either of them, good though they are, as great titles. They're good games, but they're not going to set the world on fire the way Red Dead Redemption 2 did on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox. No one's going to be stressing out trying to decide which Dawn of Man or Deliver Us the Moon character to dress up as for Comic-Con. You know what I'm saying here? If it hadn't been for the fact that I did get myself a PlayStation 4 last Christmas, and I had Red Dead Redemption 2 and other titles like Horizon Zero Dawn, I feel like I wouldn't have had anything to play other than, you know, the usual suspects, which for me, World of Warships and World of Warcraft. Aside from that, and the occasional decent game like Deliver Us the Moon, like Dawn of Man, if not for my regular PC fare, and the occasional little gem that never seems to sell as well as it should, I feel that there's just been nothing out on PC in 2019. And it feels like I've been complaining about this ever since the end of 2018. I mean, it's just not fair. Where's our Red Dead Redemption 2? Well, funnily enough, out on PC tomorrow. Yeah. I suppose it was inevitable, given the amount of money that it made on console. More or less exactly the same thing that happened with Grand Theft Auto 5, although disappointing that there's still no PC version of the original Red Dead Redemption, but that's never going to happen at this stage. You can still pre-order it, I believe, using the Rockstar Games launcher, and if you do pre-order it, you're entitled to claim a free game from the Rockstar back catalogue. But yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC as of tomorrow. I have bought it for PC. I will be playing the whole thing again, trying to do things slightly differently. Of course, the story isn't going to be any different or any better, just because it's on PC rather than console, but, well, it's difficult to improve on perfection. The graphics are going to be slightly better if you have the PC that can handle it, and of course you've got mouse and keyboard aim, so I might actually be able to do the shooty bits without sucking this time around. But the thing is, it's not just Red Dead Redemption 2. It's like this entire year we've had a drought of spectacularly good PC games. And then suddenly, there's like a dozen of them all turning up at the same time. Let me just go through the laundry list of spectacularly good, or just spectacular, titles available for the PC in or around about a 2-month period centred on roughly right now. Let's get the big ones out of the way first. Call of Duty Modern Warfare. It may not be spectacularly good, but it's good enough, and it is definitely spectacular, and it's available on PC right now. Next up, coming out in almost exactly 2 weeks, Star Wars Jedi: The Fallen Order. Yes, I know it's Electronic Arts, but apparently, early word is, it's not completely terrible, which is remarkable by Electronic Arts' Star Wars game standards. I mean, think about it. In the length of time that they've had the Star Wars license, actually let's go back a little further. Before Electronic Arts got their hands on the Star Wars license, all official Star Wars games were being produced by LucasArts, who were formerly known as Lucasfilm Games. They were pushing out roughly 3 to 4 Star Wars games every year, and you could usually expect at least 3 of them were going to be amazingly good. I mean, we're talking here about some absolute all-time classic PC games. Games like X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Dark Forces, Rebel Assault, Shadows of the Empire, Star Wars Rebellion, Empire at War, Jedi Knight 2, Dark Forces 2, Star Wars Galaxies, The Knights of the Old Republic, Jedi Academy. I mean, the list goes on and on. Oh, and let's, of course, not forget Republic Commando. And, of course, the original Battlefront games, you know, the ones that weren't shit. And then in 2013, Electronic Arts acquired the Star Wars license. Now, I have to be fair here. Of all of the Star Wars games produced by LucasArts, and as they were formerly known, Lucasfilm Games, prior to 2013, games produced back then often didn't require 2 years of development time. They had much shorter development cycles, and they didn't cost nearly as much. But still, 3 or 4 games every year, consistently every year, when LucasArts was in charge of the franchise, and you could reliably expect 3 of those 4 games to at least be very good. And then Electronic Arts take over, and in the space of nearly 7 years they've produced exactly 4 Star Wars games. Well, I say 4, one of them doesn't count because Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes was a mobile phone game. So in the space of nearly 7 years they've produced 3 Star Wars games. The first game they pushed out, developed by BioWare for Electronic Arts, was the massively multiplayer online role-playing game Star Wars The Old Republic. And to be completely fair to it, it wasn't terrible. There were a couple of things that it did very well, but it mostly just kind of relied on being Star Wars. And I think its biggest problem was that it was set in the Old Republic, and once you took away the lightsabers, it was difficult to tell that you were playing a Star Wars game. And there just wasn't really anything new and different enough about it for it to stand out from the crowd in what was at the time a very bloated marketplace for games of that genre. Well, there were some things that the Old Republic definitely did very well. We're talking primarily game mechanics here, but all of the other major players in the market soon copied the things that the Old Republic did well, which didn't really leave the Old Republic looking particularly special. Players started drifting away from it, subscriber numbers fell dramatically, enough so that the game eventually was forced to go free to play. So Electronic Arts' first Star Wars game definitely was not a complete disaster on launch, but, well, within a year or two it had become a complete disaster. So that's strike 1 for Electronic Arts in their handling of the Star Wars franchise. What came next? Oh yes, that would be Star Wars Battlefront. Yeah. Again, credit where credit's due, they absolutely, definitely, 100% nailed the Star Wars look, sound and feel, and that's pretty much all they did, because Battlefront was a completely generic online shooter. If it wasn't for the fact that it was Star Wars, I suspect nobody would have bought it. To be completely fair, it wasn't absolutely terrible, it was just, take away the Star Wars and what have you got? A completely generic online shooter. So there's strike number 2. What came next? Oh, that would be Star Wars Battlefront 2. The game that single-handedly generated a legal and cultural dumpster fire of such epic proportions that the ramifications are still being felt today. And leaving aside the quality of the gameplay, which was no better, although also no worse, than Star Wars Battlefront, but one of the major complaints levelled against Star Wars Battlefront was that there was no single-player story campaign. Well, they put a single-player story campaign into Battlefront 2. Oh my god, how I wish they hadn't bothered. It was... None of it made the slightest lick of sense. I mean, the story was so nonsensical and just downright stupid that if you were to spend a couple of hours playing through the campaign in Star Wars Battlefront 2, you'd have lost so many brain cells that you'd be able to sit down and watch Star Wars The Last Jedi and come out of that thinking that the story actually made sense. Now, ordinarily, it's 3 strikes and you're out, but despite the fact, because it is a fact, that Electronic Arts, in the 7 years, nearly 7 years that they've had this license, they've only managed to produce 3 games, none of which can really be considered successful. They've all either bombed and sunk without trace, or they've generated so much controversy that they've wiped billions off Electronic Arts share prices. So at some point you have to think, what are Disney doing while all this is going on? Well, aside from, burying Star Wars themselves with the utterly terrible new movies, actually maybe there's a connection there. Maybe Disney don't know what good Star Wars is either. That would actually make a lot of sense. But either way, Electronic Arts have a 4th bite at the apple. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And by all accounts, it doesn't completely suck. Although I'm taking that with a pinch of salt, because by all accounts, Anthem didn't completely suck. All of the previews for Anthem were full of nothing but praise. Now, this game looks, plays and feels amazing, and then it came out and it completely sucked. It made you wonder, all the people that reviewed this game or previewed this game, were they playing the same game that I'm playing? I mean, but that's another issue entirely. The thing is, I remain hopeful for Star Wars Jedi The Fallen Order. I mean, it's been developed by Respawn Entertainment, and they do have a very, very good track record. They're responsible for Titanfall, Apex Legends, both of which are games that have not only done very well financially, but are held in very high regard by both players and critics alike. They are a developer with a proven track record and pedigree. Although at the same time, BioWare were a developer with a proven track record and pedigree, right up until Electronic Arts sank their teeth into them. And yes, Electronic Arts are publishing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. But I remain hopeful. Actually, here's a funny thing. I don't know how much any of you have been keeping up with the development of the game, specifically interviews with the developers, Respawn Entertainment, but whenever you do read an interview with them, it's funny how much the same phrase keeps cropping up over and over and over again. Specifically, words to the effect of, Electronic Arts didn't meddle in the development of this title. We were pretty much left to get on with things as we saw fit. It's quite telling, really, isn't it, when a developer is so keen to distance themselves from their publisher. They keep repeating how little the publisher had to do with the development of the game that they're working on every chance they get. So, well, I don't know. Maybe it'll suck, maybe it won't. In 2 weeks we're going to find out. But enough about that. How about games that are out right now that you could be playing, if you're not already, at this very instant? Well, how about the Outer Worlds? So, I did a video about the Outer Worlds earlier last week. I have since completed it, and I'm playing it again, because it's that good, and I really want to see what I can do differently. The game's developed by Obsidian Entertainment. It's really good to see them doing well and back on form. Obsidian, of course, responsible for Fallout New Vegas, amongst other things. Another developer with a proven track record and pedigree. And as I pointed out in my initial Outer Worlds video, aside from the fact that it is a really good game, it would deserve to do well simply because Obsidian just made a game and sold it to you. They didn't make it deliberately grindy in order to be able to sell you boosters in the in-game premium shop. They didn't carve a third of the game off prior to launch so that they could repackage it as DLC and sell it to you later. There aren't huge sections of the game locked behind paywalls. It's not riddled with microtransactions. There aren't any microtransactions in it at all. There is no premium shop designed to sell you a multitude of different ways to enhance your experience and enjoyment of the product. If you're playing the game and your internet connection craps out, you just keep playing the game. Who'd have thought such a thing was possible in this day and age? I know, it's crazy, right? You can just buy the game and play it without having to be constantly connected to some kind of nebulous online service all the bloody time. It's like we've gone back to 1995 or something. Except with really good graphics. Well, by 1995 standards anyway. It's crazy, man. So, aside from just playing the game, I've also been curious to see what other people have to say about it. And generally speaking, well, everybody loves it. The reviews have been through the roof, again, both from critics and players. But something that Jim Sterling had to say about the Outer Worlds I thought was particularly relevant. And of course, there are going to be comparisons here to Fallout 76. And not just Fallout 76, but other Bethesda titles, including but not limited to Skyrim, Fallout 4 and Fallout 3. Actually, to be fair to Jim Sterling, I should put a link down in the video description to the video where he discusses these very things. And if you like Jim Sterling, great, go and watch his video. If you don't like Jim Sterling, great, I'm going to basically summarise what he said, which I thought was very insightful. So, here's the thing about, well, specifically Fallout 3, Fallout 4 and Skyrim, but generally Bethesda games. Bethesda's games, as far back as anybody can remember, have always been bug-ridden pieces of shit. No, they have. I'm not saying people haven't enjoyed playing Bethesda games. I'm not saying that Bethesda haven't produced some of the greatest and most fondly remembered PC games ever. They absolutely have. But those games have been bug-ridden pieces of shit. This is just a fact. Fallout 3, Fallout 4 and Skyrim, and we're by no means limiting ourselves to just these three titles here. Pretty much all Bethesda games have followed this template. From a technical perspective, have been riddled with problems. Bugs in the physics, bugs in the textures, bugs in the lighting, bugs in the graphics engine, bugs in the game engine, bugs in the conversation trees, bugs in the quests, bugs in the non-player characters. It's just, there isn't a single part of a Bethesda title that you cannot point to and say, there aren't any bugs there. I realise I've probably put far too many double negatives in there for me to actually say what it was that I wanted to say, but you get the idea. Point to any particular point of a Bethesda game and you're going to find a bug. And yet people still love these games, and deservedly so. Because of the world building, because of just the sheer depth and variety of things to do in these games. You can quite literally, and I have, for example, played Skyrim and Fallout 4 for 6 months, playing nearly every day for hours each day without even bothering to follow the main plot, quest or storyline, and still never run out of things to do. And there aren't many games that you can say that about. I mean, Ubisoft try with the whole open world thing that they keep shoehorning into every title that they churn out, but they don't even come close to the scope, depth, detail and variety that Bethesda routinely put into their games. And it's because of that dedication to building a believable world that people have been content to put up with and live with the bugs, because everything else about those games was just so incredibly good. And this, of course, is where Bethesda had a bit of a hold my beer moment. You know where this is going, don't you? So, what would happen if Bethesda decided, okay, you know the reasons why people keep playing our games despite the horrific coding and the proliferation of bugs? Reasons like world building, story, atmosphere, quests, characters, dialogue, all of that good shit. What if we take all of that out and we don't bother with any of that shit? You know, the reasons why people play our games in the first place. What if we strip all of that out and just give them the bugs? Riddle it with microtransactions. Promise them that we'll fix the bugs after release. Some of the bugs, which, by the way, were legacy bugs from Fallout 4 that still made it into Fallout 76 and then, well, failed to fix those bugs anyway. A year down the line, we'll start charging them a $100 a year subscription fee, and we'll fuck that up as well. And we'll call it Fallout 76. Is there anybody left at this stage who isn't wondering to themselves, Bethesda, just what the fuck were you thinking? Why would you take out everything that are the reasons why people played your game in the first place? Why would you do that and expect it to work? Well, the good news, thanks to Obsidian Entertainment, is that you don't have to put up with Bethesda's shit anymore, because if you want to play a Bethesda game, that has all of that stuff in it, all of the good stuff, the reasons why we put up with Bethesda's shit for so long, and doesn't have any bugs and just works, play The Outer Worlds. I've put 30 hours into it in the second half of last week, finished it once, and I'm playing it through again. And I found a bug. Well, I thought I'd found a bug. It turned out I was just doing the quest wrong. It wasn't a bug at all. It was just me being stupid. I'm sure there are some bugs in there somewhere. It's just I haven't found any after 30 hours of gameplay. So, The Outer Worlds, I seriously cannot recommend it enough. It's just Obsidian doing what they do, and doing it as well as they always have. So, anyway, let's stop and take a head count. Red Dead Redemption 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Jedi, The Fallen Order, and The Outer Worlds. That's only 4 titles. Surely there's more than that. Oh, you bet your arse there is. I've also been playing and finishing, and then starting again from scratch for a second playthrough, a game recently that reminded me of what many, if you're old enough, might consider to be the single greatest computer role-playing game ever written. In 1999, Black Isle Studios, the developers responsible for Fallout, Fallout 2, Baldur's Gate, and Baldur's Gate 2, released what I consider to be the most perfect piece of software they had ever written. The game was called Planescape Torment. Now, there's a remastered version of the game available on Steam. However, I would hesitate to recommend it, not because it's bad, quite the opposite. It is absolutely fantastic, but it can be hard going. The game is heavily reliant on lots and lots of text in multiple branching conversation trees for the interaction between the characters. So a lot of people are just not going to have the stomach to read through reams and reams of text. I get it, there's nothing wrong with that. People like what they like. But I'm saying this just to warn you, because while I definitely recommend the original game and the remastered version on Steam, it's not going to be for everybody's tastes. However, if you do like that sort of thing, and perhaps you fondly remember Planescape Torment, as I do, there is another new game out that you might be interested in. It's called Disco Elysium. It came out for PC on the 15th of October. Apparently it's getting a console release next year. And I have already completed it once, loved every minute of it, and I'm about a third of the way through a second playthrough, except doing things completely differently the second time around. It's difficult to say what it is about Disco Elysium that I found so utterly captivating, other than its resemblance to Planescape Torment, which was obviously a huge influence on the game designers. But it's set in a completely different world. It just does things the same way. It's got the most captivating characters, particularly the main character. It's really difficult for me to tell you what it is about Disco Elysium that's so amazing without utterly ruining the plot and the story for you. If you can put up with reading all of the text, and I sincerely hope you can put up with reading all of the text that it makes you read, you're going to be absolutely enthralled by the story and the interplay between the characters, and not just between the characters. And well, it's not too much of a spoiler if I tell you that the main character doesn't just have conversations with other characters in the game, he also has conversations with parts of his own personality. He has arguments with parts of his own personality. It's a crazy game, but it just works. Again, in the interests of not trying to spoil it for you, and I'm definitely not going to be doing a video playthrough of this game, by the way, because if you're going to experience it, you deserve to experience it for yourself. But just to try to summarize it for you, you play a detective in a world, which is kind of based on our world, but there are substantial differences. You wake up in a flea pit hotel with no idea of who you are or even what your job is or where you live, after a ferocious weekend bender off your face on drugs and alcohol. You figure out that you're a cop, but you've lost your gun and your badge. You don't know what it is you're supposed to be investigating. And your own psyche is having an argument with you. It's just an utterly offbeat, crazy game that deserves to reach the widest possible audience. And I appreciate that many of you probably won't have the stomach to read through all of the text that the game throws at you. But those of you who can put up with it will not regret playing Disco Elysium. Next up, I've also been getting into Steel Division 2. It's a new title from Wargaming. Not developed by Wargaming, but published by Wargaming. It's a strategy game, and it's kind of pitched halfway between games like Panzer General and Unity of Command. It's more complex than that, but it's not quite as eye-wateringly complex as something like Hearts of Iron. I mean, I love Hearts of Iron. I love the idea of Hearts of Iron, but I'm no good at it. It's too much for me. I handle the game well up until I'm actually required to fight a battle, which is a bit of a problem when you're playing a war game. Games like Unity of Command and Panzer General are simple enough for me to be able to play and enjoy, but there's not that much complexity to them, and that's kind of where Steel Division 2 fills the gap. I'm by no means an expert at it, and I've really only dabbled my toe in the waters at the moment. There just hasn't really been time with so many other things for me to play. But I'm committed to, if not getting good at it, at least becoming competent enough at it that I'm comfortable to produce a video on the game, because it is pretty good, and I would like to do a video or two on it. And there aren't that many strategy or war game type titles out there that are pitched at that kind of difficulty level. Like, not ridiculously complicated like Hearts of Iron 4, but more complex than the entry-level titles like Panzer General and Unity of Command. So, Steel Division 2, coming soon. There is one other title that I'm very much looking forward to, and it's coming out this week. Unfortunately, we can't have everything. It's not a PC title, or at least not yet. Coming out this week on the PlayStation 4, well, and the Xbox One as well, I suppose. It's the new Hideo Kojima project. Yes, the Metal Gear Solid guy. And it's called Death Stranding. You may have seen videos, you may have seen advertisements. Yes, it stars Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl in The Walking Dead, amongst other things. I believe the Danish actor Mads Mikkelsen is in there as well, but nobody's... Well, I don't know, maybe some people are looking forward to it because Norman Reedus and Mads Mikkelsen are in it, but most people are getting excited because it's the new project from Hideo Kojima. Since he split with, was it Konami? Whoever published the Metal Gear Solid games, he's basically had the freedom to do whatever the hell he wants. Now, this can be a very good thing, it can be a very, very bad thing as well, because when visionary directors have the freedom to do whatever the hell they want, with nobody standing over their shoulder saying, no, that's a bad idea, you absolutely can't do that, what the hell were you thinking, have you gone crazy, you can end up with things like, I don't know, the Phantom Menace, right? So there is that danger. When things can become very self-indulgent, if there's nobody there holding the reins saying, whoa, hold on there, cowboy, slow the hell down, are you sure you want to do that? So there is that danger with Death Stranding. Now, it's obviously a Japanese game, so it's going to be batshit crazy, and huge parts of it are going to make no sense whatsoever. And it's also a Hideo Kojima game, so it's probably going to be even more batshit crazy than that. And yet, there's just something magnificent about the way this guy makes games. As far as the story's concerned, well, let me just read you from The Guardian's review. This is great, okay? Here we go. For reasons unknown, America has been fractured by the Death Stranding event, causing the dead to roam the world of the living as shadowy spectres known as the Beached Things, obviously, or BTs. People have retreated into isolated communities, and your job is to deliver supplies and reconnect the chiral network, a mega internet, to unite the country. You need to cross the shattered landscape and find the president's daughter Amelie, who's been abducted by terrorists called the Homo Demens. There's obviously more going on, as hero Sam Bridges unearths his past and learns about the mysterious cliff, and your ghost-detecting pod baby, BB. No, you didn't mishear me. Yes, your ghost detecting pod baby. If you've seen any of the video previews surrounding this game, you cannot fail to have noticed that Norman Reedus' character has an artificial womb strapped to his belly with a baby in it, looking out through a window. Like I said, it's Hideo Kojima. It's going to be slightly mad. But it looks utterly amazing. And even if it is crazy, it's going to be memorable. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this as well. So, all kinds of great and potentially great games to look forward to. And that's kind of the problem. I mean, I've spent most of 2019 dripping like a septic arsehole about the fact that there's been bugger all worth playing on PC this entire year. You know, with the exception of one or two minor gems, and then suddenly all of these games come out at more or less exactly the same time. How am I supposed to cover them all? I only do 6 videos a week. I mean, it's a nice problem to have, I have to admit, but God almighty, can they not pace themselves? Well, anyway, I'm certainly not likely to get bored over the course of the next couple of months with this lot to look forward to, and hopefully you lot too. In fact, if you even only buy one of these games and you make sure it's Red Dead Redemption 2, that game alone is going to keep you merrily occupied on PC until at least the beginning of February. But you should probably buy the Outer Worlds too, just because Obsidian deserve it. Anyway, that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's given you something to look forward to. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.